Something big is brewing, bigger than a budget cut, deeper than a diplomatic disagreement. Behind closed doors in Westminster and Washington, tensions are rising. Decisions made in the next 24 hours could hit your wallet harder than anything we've seen in years. As the UK braces for what some are calling a tax hell, all eyes are on President Donald Trump, whose next move could send shockwaves through the British economy. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is watching closely, and quietly. She's preparing for impact. Let's break it down, but first, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Just a quick one to say we have new Liber t-shirts available on our website. You can check the link in the description or go to BritishStand.com. Britain stands at the edge of a fiscal storm. As President Donald Trump prepares to roll out sweeping new tariffs under his Liberation Day economic agenda, the ripple effects are already reaching London, and for British taxpayers the forecast looks bleak. According to the Office for Budget Responsibility, Chancellor Rachel Reeves may be left with no choice but to hike taxes if Trump follows through on tariff plans as expected on Wednesday. This would come into force as early as Thursday morning, potentially slapping UK exports with up to 25% tariffs. The impact could be devastating for British manufacturers and exporters trying to maintain access to the US market, still one of the UK's most vital trade partners. Ministers in Westminster had been quietly hoping for an exemption. After all, Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited the White House just weeks ago, touting a new economic partnership with Washington. But behind the diplomatic smiles, those negotiations now appear to be faltering. According to government insiders, hopes of securing any kind of carve-out for Britain are fading fast. The implications are not just economic, they're deeply political. The UK government's ability to manage its finances has already been strained. After last week's spring statement, Britain's so-called fiscal headroom, the leeway Reeves has to spend without breaking her own financial rules, stood at £9.9 billion. That may sound like a cushion, but it's a fragile one. Professor David Miles of the OBR was blunt in his testimony to MPs. If Trump's tariffs are imposed and last for 5 years, as anticipated, that fiscal buffer would be knocked out completely. Gone. Wiped out. That would leave Reeves with an unenviable choice. Breach her own fiscal rules or raise taxes. And Reeves has been adamant those rules are non-negotiable. Ironclad. So what does that mean for the rest of us? Cuts or taxes? And with public services already stretched thin and welfare spending taking a hit just last week, the direction of travel is becoming clear. Reeves has already come under fire for slashing welfare budgets to protect her fiscal credibility. The Institute for Government didn't mince words, calling her approach exactly the wrong way to be making complex policy decisions. Even within Labour ranks, discontent is growing. Many MPs were visibly uncomfortable with the cuts, especially in light of growing economic uncertainty. Yet despite the criticism, the Chancellor isn't flinching. And with Trump on the verge of upending global trade dynamics yet again, she may soon have her hand forced. At Tuesday's cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister tried to reassure his ministers, saying the government would act in a calm and pragmatic manner, not driven by panic, but by national interest. That may be true in tone, but in substance, officials are already scrambling behind the scenes. UK negotiators are working around the clock to either delay the tariffs or water them down. But so far, Trump has shown no sign of retreat. In fact, insiders close to the White House suggest that the president sees these tariffs not as a threat, but as a tool of strength, leveraging America's economic muscle to bring other nations to heel. The truth is, Trump's economic doctrine isn't about building consensus, it's about reshaping the playing field. And for countries like Britain, caught in the middle of US-China tensions and facing domestic financial constraints, the options are narrowing. There is a silver lining, however faint. Professor Miles did note that if Trump's trade war is limited to other countries, such as China, some British businesses might actually benefit, temporarily. With Chinese goods redirected from US markets, some may flood into the UK at cheaper prices. But this isn't a strategy, it's an unintended side effect. And even that fragile benefit rests on assumptions. Assumptions that Trump won't extend the tariffs further, or shift targets, or tighten enforcement. In other words, it's not a plan the UK government can rely on. In more news, as tensions continue to mount over the war in Ukraine, army insiders have revealed the shocking reasons behind our dwindling armed forces. The British Army currently stands at a little over 70,000 personnel, its smallest size since the Napoleonic era over 200 years ago, when Britain's total population was just under 10 million people. It is projected to dip below 70,000 next year, meaning the entire army, whose job it is to protect Britain from the might of enemies like Russia and North Korea, could fit into Wembley with 20,000 seats to spare. The paltry size of our army in comparison to that of Russia's 1.3 million to 18.5 times larger has been a point of fierce debate over the last weeks after Keir Starmer said he was ready to put boots on the ground in Ukraine to protect a peace deal. Critics laughed at Starmer's grandstanding and pointed out Britain could probably deploy a maximum of 25,000 troops at any one time in Ukraine on rotation, well under President Zelensky's belief that 200,000 troops would be needed to police a ceasefire. British troops, while well trained, would hardly make a difference when Ukraine is fighting on a 650-mile front line, 50 miles longer than the entire length of the UK. Crudely speaking, deploying 25,000 troops to police the front line would mean adding roughly 38 soldiers per mile of front line, which would make little difference against the Russian war machine, and that's not including the fact many soldiers would be well behind the front. There is also the fact Ukraine has suffered 70,000 casualties since the war began, meaning if British troops were to be fighting a similar war with Russia, it would be wiped out in 3 years. Commentators have highlighted that with the Ukraine war reaching a critical juncture, politicians and voters are waking up to the terrifying reality that for almost every year in the last 2 decades, the British Army has shrunk, leaving us highly vulnerable. Given the perilous geopolitical situation and Starmer's commitment to increase defense spending, it would be natural to assume army recruitment is flat out. However, the reality appears to be very different. As an example, 2 people trying to join the army who have both reported slow, frustrating application processes. Ryan Holloway, 24, from South Wales, is currently trying to join the army as an officer. He said, "I made my initial application to join in August 2024. Since then, there have been loads of multiple week periods with no update from the army on the process of my application, just silence. I've had 1 medical and 1 interview, that's it. Otherwise, it's just waiting." For context, Ryan is a British passport holder, medically fit, and has no criminal record or offences that you could expect to cause delays. Sometimes they set you tasks to do online, but when you complete them, the system doesn't register it. So you are emailed constantly to finish it, he said. The whole system is clunky and inefficient. It doesn't inspire confidence. Asked if the delays have affected motivation to join, Holloway said, "I guess it does. I just don't really know what's going. That's the worst part. If I wasn't going for the army, I would probably just be applying to other jobs by now. It's been so long. But it's not that easy because I don't know how long I'll be waiting. They could start my training in a few weeks and then I would have to leave another job at short notice. Or it could be months and I would have been better off working a stopgap job." It comes as all 3 services continue to consistently miss recruitment targets. Army officers hold leadership roles that usually require more training than more basic soldier roles, but even joining as a soldier can take equally long. Tom Flynn, who is joining the Royal Signals as a power engineer, had to wait 8 months before beginning initial basic training. Surely joining the army and beginning training should be a simple process, he asked. If we want to increase army personnel, this system has to be changed. Imagine if Britain actually had to increase the size of its army to respond to a crisis, it would be at least a year before any new recruits would actually be trained and ready to fight. Reacting, Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge MP said, "It's obviously concerning to hear about these cases, and I sympathise with the individuals concerned who just want to serve their country. In government, we commissioned the Haythorne-Thwaite Review, which recommended a radical overhaul of military recruitment and retention, and so I've tabled a series of parliamentary questions to understand what Labour are doing to implement the report's recommendations. In government, we also commissioned the Armed Forces Recruitment Programme, which was recently signed under Labour and is designed to streamline the process across defence. Last month, Labour Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard announced the Armed Forces Recruitment Service, AFRS, a new scheme that will launch in 2027 to try and speed up recruitment. The scheme will replace the individual schemes run by the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force, and according to an MOD press release, the new contract will ensure better value for taxpayer money and better outcomes for our armed forces. The first ever tri-service recruitment service will provide a streamlined single entry point for prospective recruits, with the aim of attracting the best talent from across the country into the armed forces to strengthen national security as the foundation of the government's plan for change, continued the press release. The MOD also announced their new ambition to make a conditional offer within 10 days of application and a confirmation of a training start date within 30 days. As the report stated, under the innovative new recruitment service, candidates will complete one application and one medical evaluation via a single digital system, offering a more straightforward process that seeks to retain applicant interest. The digitally enhanced process will see applications reviewed, offers made, and training begin at a faster pace than individual services currently. But the scheme is still very much in its infancy and is not being rolled out for another 2 years. Critics have been quick to point out Putin could have conquered the rest of Ukraine and moved on to his next targets by then. It comes after Keir Starmer increased defense spending from 2.3 to 2.5% by slashing the foreign aid budget, a move that helped give Labour a bounce in the polls. Starmer has committed to raising defense spending to 3% in the next parliament, far higher than most major European countries, but still not enough to reverse decades of underfunding, top military chiefs have warned. US President Donald Trump wants NATO members to spend 5% on defense meanwhile. One serving soldier who has completed multiple tours of duty across the world said, "The Americans are absolutely correct to call upon us to increase our spending. It is embarrassing even in the Gulf nearly 20 years ago, where the soldier served 2 tours. They jokingly referred to us as the borrowers, as we could not even fully support our own soldiers, even on operations." The soldier, who had to remain anonymous for security reasons, continued, "The situation has significantly worsened since then, with empty sheds and depleted armories, and much of what is in the cupboard is outdated. Starmer will be shocked at the actual size of the force we can deploy to peace. Keep from this hollow baseline. The House of Lords and ex-chiefs are correct. 2.5% of GDP on defense will be irrelevant. It needs to be 3 to 4% just to backfill the hole. Sorry to be so negative, but the army is a paper tiger, and we need to scream it loud and clear to the public. And once again prioritize defense spending. The MOD have yet to comment. What are your thoughts on what we discussed in today's video? Let me know down in the comment section below. If you've not yet already, make sure you do drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more British content. Thank you, take care, goodbye.